To be honest, on the very morning today, I was skeptical about her leaving the power because she has been running the country with iron fist for the past 15 years, and she was the longest prime minister in modern history. So because she has been ruling the country through with an iron grip, and she was so powerful, and she had that aura because she had cowed down the judiciary, she had cowed down the oppositions with lots of cases and legal tangles, and it was unthinkable. But her fall was inevitable because you know what? Because during her one decade and a half long rule, there were like three controversial elections, and people were very angry because they couldn't speak. Their voices were stifled, and this has caused all the problems. But the whole country was like a powder cake, and all they needed was a spark. And
You said it was a complete surprise that she left so suddenly. Do we know? Did she sort of leave of her own volition, or was, in fact, she told to go by the military?
I think she was told by the military to go because in the past 3 weeks, more than 300 peoples were killed. On the first wave from July 16 to July 22, at least 266 people were killed. And then there were because the government imposed curfew and they didn't let anyone to go outside, certain period of lull. But then again, the protesters started coming out. And on this Saturday, at least 40 to 50,000 protesters have gathered in central Dhaka, and from there they declared just one demand: we want resignation of Prime Minister Hasina. But ironically, it didn't start like that. They were protesting for a government's jobs quota reform. They wanted, in government jobs, which a person has to get by attending a civil service exam. Out of 100%, 56% were reserved for different quotas, and most notably 30% for the descendants of the freedom fighters of 1971, and the students were particularly protesting that. So what happened? In a separate press conference, Prime Minister Hasina was asked about this quota protesters, and she made a derogatory remark. She basically called all these protesters Razakar. Razakar is like akin to Queensling, and that the protester took it very seriously.
What
And
it might be too early to say, but what happens next? The head of the army has talked about an interim government. What are the
yes,
next steps likely to be? Do you think?
the army chief has very clearly said that this is not going to be a military takeover. Which in Bangladesh history, there were several cases of military takeover, and people are very, they're agitated about like another military takeover. So he made sure that this is not going to be a military takeover. It's going to be an interim government. But the nature of the government, he has held talk with all the heads of the main oppositions as well as some members from the civil society, and I think it's a good step. And there is one list which is circling around, but this is not a confirmed list yet. But there were the names of at least 14 people, 14 prominent people, and most of them are very acceptable to large populace. So if they are the members of this interim government, I think uh, the people will not mind.
So you're hopeful of a peaceful transition. Is there
We think so at this point.
is there a wider dimension to this? Because of course, the power play in Asia is India versus China. Pakistan is in there as well. Where does Bangladesh fit into that bigger game?
Um, Bangladesh's economy was not doing bad under Hasina's rule. For largely because of we have a booming garments industry where largely the entrepreneurs, they are doing for their own goods, and that's why the industry was booming. And then we have NGOs and everything. We had a large diaspora outside who were sending remittances amounting to 24 billions a year. So, economy was doing good until COVID and then the Ukraine-Russia war. And all of a sudden our reserve have started plummeting to one third, and people were apprehensive about taking any more any loans from China because China is known for putting into countries which is called Chinese debt trap. And then again, India is obviously have a large shadow over Bangladesh because it is its largest neighbor, and it's a widespread notion among the public that New Delhi is calling shot from there over the Bangladesh's administration, especially Hasina administration. So Sheikh Hasina was doing not doing bad. She was doing some sort of balance between India and China. But at this point I'm not sure like what will be the step of interim government, because China is our biggest economic partner and India is obviously like our biggest political partner. So Yeah.
Faisal, we'll have to leave it there. But thank you very much, Faisal Mahmud, speaking from Dhaka on the hopes for a peaceful transition after the shock departure of Sheikh Hasina.
Can you just remind us of why people have been protesting?
Hi. It all started with the quota movement protest. It's actually the students protesting against their rights for the government jobs. Because there was a quota system which actually they felt disadvantaged them because it was heavily favoring the people given to the freedom fighters. So that actually sparked the whole movement. But very soon, in the fourth or fifth day of the movement, it actually turned a total different direction when there was issues and fightings with the ruling party student wings.
Oh, I think we've just lost you there for a second, Ashfaq. I'm going to try asking another question and hopefully we'll be able to get back into the conversation. Can you explain to us, though, how the protests have become so bad that the Prime Minister has had to flee?
So as I was mentioning, that the initial protest actually started for only the quota movement. That was the main wish. But I think the main problem started when this ruling party students wing actually also participated on behalf of the government in trying to contain this protest. It was a very violent skirmish where a lot of students actually had to, got killed. And the police also had severe force being implemented to sort of manage the protest. And what the students were expecting was then an apology. So their demand from the quota movement actually sort of got increased into other demands as well. For example, apologies from the top premier, and at the same time, also resignations of different ministers, including the home minister. But what we have seen after that is that instead of any apology, the brutal force or the sentiment of not understanding the loss of the students or the general citizens was pretty eminent. And what resulted into that is a lot of rage within the students as well as general citizens as well, because please do mark that these students are not part of any political party. These students are pretty much the citizens and the future of this country,
Yeah.
studying in the best public university.
And the fact that the Prime Minister has fled to India, what does that tell us? I mean, she has sought refuge with a country that has previously supported her and her government. So is some of the protest actually directed against exactly that relationship?
At this point of the time, there's the overwhelming idea is basically, I mean, the overwhelming feeling is was all targeted towards the government. So people have not really soaked into the thought of, she going into India. But it was quite well anticipated by the people as well, because the current, I mean, Sheikh Hasina, the former prime minister, if I may say that at this point of the time, has a very good relationship with the government of India, which we have seen in the last G20 as well as the last election as well. So it was pretty much anticipated, and it was if you go to the streets and people are, in fact, it seems that they're quite happy that she has moved into that country.